हेलो दोस्तों, स्वागत है आप सभी का हमारे चैनल इग्नो सेंटर पर। तो दोस्तों, आज का जो समरी है वो माय ग्रैंडमदर हाउस बाय कमला दास की समरी है, जिसका हम आपको फुल रिटर्न नोट्स प्रोवाइड कराने जा रहे हैं। तो दोस्तों, अगर आप हमारे चैनल के साथ नए जुड़े हैं तो ज़रूर सब्सक्राइब कर लीजिएगा आगे की अपडेट पाने के लिए। और दोस्तों, अगर आपको ये चैनल की वीडियो अच्छी लगती है तो एक लाइक और एक कमेंट ज़रूर करिएगा। तो दोस्तों, बढ़ते हैं हमारी समरी की ओर। माय ग्रैंडमदर्स हाउस बाय कमला दास। The poem My Grandmother's House first appeared in Kamala Das' first anthology of verse titled Summertime in Calcutta, 1965. It is also an autobiographical poem in which the poet, longing for her parental house in Malabar, is movingly described. She is reminded of the ancestral house where she had received immense love and affection from her grandmother. The poet's feminine sensibility finds its clearest loveless relationship in it. A note of pessimism runs throughout the action of the poem. It reveals the poet's painful, unfulfilled desire to visit her grandmother's house, to which she is deeply and emotionally attached. The poet is shocked to learn that the house is all in ruin after the death of her grandmother. She suffers in silence due to the wear and tear it has undergone in her absence. A death-like silence reigns in her grandmother's house. Moreover, the intensity of her grief is suggestively conveyed by the ellipses in the form of a few dots. In this section of the poem, it was her disenchantment with her loveless marriage which remind her of her grandmother's pure and selfless love. Her heart is itself like a dark window where the fresh air does not blow. The image of the house has stuck in her mind. The poet has also used the similes of a brooding dog shows her inability to pay a visit to her grandmother's house. She has also used suggestive visual imaginary of blind eyes of the windows and the frozen air to convey the idea of death and desperation. So friend, after writing that, you can write the poem full analysis. So let's move on to analysis. The poem My Grandmother's House, which can be read in full here, shows Kamala Das' intense love and attachment to it. She suffered from an acute sense of alienation after having left this place after her marriage. The poet now lives in a big city after her marriage, a remote place from her grandmother's house. She is reminded of her grandmother's house where she spent her memorable childhood. Ironically, it is the only place where she received love from her grandmother. The death of the grandmother is even mourned by the house to which she was emotionally attached. A death-like silence reigns in the house after her exit from this world. It seemed that the grandmother was the very soul of this house. Being deserted, the snakes could be seen among books in the library of the house. At that point of time, she was too young to read those books, which looked quite horrible and repulsive like snakes. She was almost frozen with fear at the passing away of her grandmother and seemed cold like the moon. The very opening line of the poem captured alive the poet's mood of nostalgia. She is reminded of the happiest days of her childhood, which she spent in the company of her grandmother. She was deeply attached to her grandmother, who was very caring and affectionate to her. She was emotionally dis- destabilized after the death of her grandmother and felt among almost heartbroken. The intensity of her grief is suggestively conveyed by the ellipse in the form of a few dots in this section of the poem. It was her disenchantment with her loveless marriage which reminded her of her grandmother's pure and selfless love. In the above line of the poem, My Grandmother's House, the poet defines her relationship with her grandmother in a very moving manner. Kamala Das is reminded of the happiest day of her childhood, which spent with her grandmother. The poet was deeply attached to her grandmother, who was very caring and affectionate to her. She was emotionally sad after the death of her grandmother, who had been the chief source of inspiration in her life. The poet often longs to visit her grandmother's house, to which she was emotionally attached since her childhood. It has been a place of security and protection which is sadly missing in her new house in the city. She would like to peep through the dust-ridden or curled panes of windows which were shut after the death of the grandmother. She would like to listen and feel the still atmosphere prevailing in the house. It is this longing to revisit her grandmother's house that adds to her sense of frustration and hopelessness. The darkness of her grandmother's house can have no terrifying impact on her. She would like to gather some darkness, some memories of the grandmother's house and bring them to her present city residence. The very memories of her grandmother's house will have a soothing impact on her loveless and hopeless married life. The poet is in a mood of reminiscence and recreates the plight of the grandmother's house. After her departure from the scene of life, she gives us the very feel of the house in its state of neglect and desertion. The poet has used the simile of a brooding dog to show her inability to pay a visit to her grandmother's house. She has employed suggestive visual imagery of blind eyes of the windows and the frozen air to convey the idea of death and depression. In this line of the poem, the poet says how her frustration and resentment in the martial life forced her to go in for extramarital relationship. The poet often longs to visit her grandmother's house, to which she was emotionally attached since her childhood. Unlike her miserable city life with her husband, it had been a place of security and genuine love for her. Here, the poet informs her dear husband that he can never believe the intensity of love that she received from her grandmother. He can never realize that she was extremely proud of her grandmother's house, where she was deeply loved by her grandmother. It is her separation from her grandmother's house after marriage that has ruined her life forever. It is loveless and hopeless marriage life that has crimped her sense of pride and love which she used to have in her grandmother's house. She has become a beggar for love who knocks helplessly at strangers' door to receive, at least in a small measure. She has almost lost her way in search of genuine and selfless love. Kamala Das exposed the futility of loveless and hopeless martial relationship in these five concluding lines of the poem. It shows the agony and humiliation of a married woman who is forced to seek extramarital relationship to seek love for her emotional satisfaction. It is the mood of nostalgia that dominates the closing passage of the poem. The poem is reminded of her grandmother's house where received love and safety in her childhood. She has lost all her identity and freedom in her loveless relationship. So friend, till here your all summary was finished, and hope you all like that. And if you like that, please don't forget to conversation us by commenting on our video, and if possible please give a thumbs to our video and subscribe to our channel so that you never missed an update. Thank you.